Los Angeles, California, autumn of 1967. The small martial arts school tucked away on a quiet street in Chinatown had seen many students pass through its doors over the years. Young men seeking confidence, actors preparing for roles, athletes looking for an edge. But nothing could have prepared the dozen students present that evening for what walked through the door at precisely 7 o'clock. The door opened, and the light from outside simply disappeared. A shadow filled the entire doorframe, a silhouette so massive that it seemed to belong to a different species entirely. The figure had to duck, bending nearly double to pass beneath the doorframe that accommodated normal humans without issue. When he straightened to his full height inside the school, several students audibly gasped. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar stood 7 feet 2 inches tall, 235 pounds of athletic power, distributed across a frame that seemed designed by nature to dominate any physical space it occupied. His arms, hanging relaxed at his sides, extended past his knees. His hands looked capable of palming a basketball the way ordinary men palmed oranges. At just 20 years old, he had already led UCLA to 3 consecutive NCAA championships, and the entire basketball world knew he was destined for greatness that would redefine the sport. But here, in this modest training hall with its wooden floors and mirrored walls, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was not a basketball legend. He was a curious man, a seeker who had heard whispers about a martial arts instructor whose skills defied explanation. He had come to see for himself. The students parted before him like reeds before a ship's prow. Even the most confident among them felt suddenly acutely aware of their own physical limitations. This man existed on a different scale, operated in dimensions that normal human bodies could not access. His head nearly touched the ceiling. His presence seemed to compress the air itself, and then Bruce Lee emerged from the back room. If you want to discover what happened when a 7'2" NBA giant challenged a man 19 inches shorter than him, and learn the lesson that would forge one of the most unlikely friendships in martial arts history, stay until the end of this story. You will not regret it. The contrast was almost absurd. Bruce Lee stood 5 feet 7 inches tall and weighed 140 pounds. Beside Kareem, he looked like a child standing next to a monument. The top of Bruce's head barely reached Kareem's chest. The basketball player's arm span exceeded Bruce's entire height by every measurable physical metric. These two men existed in separate categories of human possibility, but those who knew Bruce Lee understood that physical metrics told only the smallest part of any story. Bruce approached his visitor with a warm smile, extending his hand in welcome. Kareem bent significantly to accept the handshake, his massive palm engulfing Bruce's hand completely. Mr. Abdul-Jabbar, Bruce said, his voice carrying the quiet confidence that all his students had come to recognize. I have heard of your interest in martial arts. Welcome to my school. Please call me Kareem. The giant's voice was surprisingly soft, thoughtful. I have heard remarkable things about you, Mr. Lee. I wanted to see for myself. Then you shall see. Bruce gestured toward the training area. I was about to begin an evening session. You are welcome to observe or to participate if you wish. Kareem chose to observe first. He folded his enormous frame onto a bench at the edge of the training floor, his knees rising almost to his chest in the seated position. From this vantage point, he watched as Bruce led his students through a series of drills and demonstrations that systematically challenged everything Kareem thought he understood about physical combat. Bruce moved with a speed that seemed to violate natural law. His strikes appeared and disappeared like lightning, arriving at their targets before the eye could track their origin. He flowed between students, demonstrating techniques that transformed disadvantages into advantages, that used an opponent's strength against them, that found angles and openings invisible to untrained perception. Kareem watched with the analytical eye of an elite athlete. He understood physical excellence. He had dedicated his life to mastering the capabilities of his own unusual body. But what he saw in Bruce Lee was something beyond excellence. It was artistry. It was physics bent to human will. When the formal session ended, the students began to disperse. But Kareem remained seated, his expression thoughtful, his mind clearly working through what he had witnessed. Bruce approached him, waiting patiently for the question he knew was coming. Mr. Lee, Kareem said slowly, rising to his full, towering height, I respect what you do. What I saw tonight was impressive. Truly, he paused, looking down at Bruce from a height that usually intimidated everyone he encountered. But I have to ask you something honestly. Please. Kareem extended his arm to its full length, demonstrating a wingspan that measured 82 inches from fingertip to fingertip. My reach is longer than your entire body. I can touch you from distances where you cannot touch me. In basketball, this makes me nearly unstoppable. He lowered his arm but maintained his gaze. Realistically, what can you do against someone my size? Are not fighting techniques designed for people of normal dimensions? The question hung in the air. Several students who had lingered to watch this encounter exchanged glances. This was the question that every martial artist eventually faced when confronting extreme physical disparity. The theoretical versus the practical. The technique versus the raw mathematics of reach and power. Bruce's smile did not waver. Would you like to find out? Something flickered in Kareem's eyes. Curiosity mixed with the competitive fire that had driven him to the pinnacle of basketball. I would. Bruce stepped back, creating space in the center of the training floor. He gestured for Kareem to join him. The remaining students pressed against the walls, understanding they were about to witness something significant. The rules are simple, Bruce explained. Try to touch me. Use any method you like. Your hands, your arms, your basketball agility. If you can make contact, you will have answered your own question. Kareem moved to the center of the floor, his movements carrying the fluid grace of an elite athlete despite his enormous size. He had spent his entire life learning to control this unusual body to make it perform feats that smaller men could only imagine. He settled into a ready position, his arms extended, his reach creating a perimeter that seemed impossible to penetrate. Whenever you are ready, Bruce said. Standing just outside that perimeter, with his hands relaxed at his sides, Kareem reached. His arm shot forward with surprising speed, covering the distance to Bruce in a fraction of a second. His hand was large enough to grip Bruce's entire head. At his full extension, he could touch objects nearly 4 feet from his body. His fingers closed on empty air. Bruce had shifted perhaps 6 inches, but it was enough. Kareem's reach, which dominated basketball courts and intimidated opponents across the country, had found nothing. The small man was simply no longer where the laws of physics suggested he should be. Kareem tried again, this time using both arms in a sweeping motion designed to cut off escape routes. His wingspan created an arc of coverage that seemed to leave no gaps, no angles of escape. Any normal person would have been caught. Bruce flowed beneath the sweep like water passing under a bridge. He emerged behind Kareem's arms, having traveled through space that should not have existed, and stood calmly just outside the giant's reach once again. Kareem employed every technique he could imagine. He used his basketball footwork, the lateral quickness that allowed him to defend against the fastest guards in college basketball. He used feints and misdirection, the same tools that created scoring opportunities against elite defenders. He used his height to attack from above, his reach to attack from distance. His athleticism to close gaps with explosive speed. Nothing worked. Bruce Lee existed in the spaces between Kareem's movements. He occupied angles that the giant's height could not address. When Kareem reached high, Bruce was low. When Kareem swept wide, Bruce was inside. When Kareem pressed forward, Bruce circled. The very attributes that made Kareem dominant in basketball, his height, his reach, his length, became liabilities against an opponent who refused to engage on those terms. After 5 minutes of futile effort, Kareem stopped. His breathing was slightly elevated, though more from concentration than physical exertion. His expression carried the unmistakable look of a man whose assumptions had just been demolished. "I cannot touch you," he said simply. "I am 19 inches taller than you. My arms are longer than your legs, and I cannot touch you." Bruce nodded, not with arrogance, but with the patience of a teacher who had just completed the first part of a lesson. Your size is not the problem. Your thinking is the problem. You have spent your life learning to use your height as a weapon, but you have never learned to defend against someone who treats your height as a target. What do you mean? Bruce's demeanor shifted subtly. Now let me show you what size cannot stop. What happened next would remain burned into Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's memory for the rest of his life. Bruce exploded from his position without any visible preparation. One instant he was standing still. The next instant he was airborne, his body rising with a speed and trajectory that seemed to ignore gravity. his foot extended in a jumping kick that traveled upward 7 feet into the air. Stopping precisely 1 inch from Kareem's jaw, the giant froze. No one had ever reached his face so fast. Not in basketball, where defenders leaped to contest his shots. Not in any physical confrontation he had ever experienced. His height, which had always been his ultimate protection, had just been bypassed completely by a man who weighed 95 pounds less than him. Bruce landed softly and immediately moved again. Before Kareem could process the first technique, Bruce was at knee level, his hand hovering beside the giant's kneecap. Then, at groin level, then reaching up toward the throat, 3 targets, all demonstrated in less than 2 seconds. Height is a weapon, Bruce said, stepping back to a conversational distance, but every weapon has blind spots. Your eyes are 7 feet from the ground. You are accustomed to threats that approach at normal human level. But the human body has vulnerabilities everywhere, and the ones closest to the ground are the hardest for a tall man to protect. He gestured to Kareem's legs. Your knees are no higher than a normal man's. Your groin is barely protected by your reach, and while you are looking down at a smaller opponent, you cannot see attacks coming from angles outside your peripheral vision. He smiled. Your size is a gift, but like all gifts, it must be understood completely to be used effectively. Kareem stood in silence for a long moment. The students watching held their breath, uncertain how the basketball giant would respond to such a thorough demonstration of his vulnerabilities. When Kareem finally spoke, his voice carried something new, something that sounded like the beginning of wisdom. I came here tonight thinking my size made me untouchable, that no one smaller than me could present a real threat. He looked down at Bruce with eyes that had been opened to new possibilities. I was wrong. Completely wrong. Size is an advantage, Bruce acknowledged, a significant one. But advantages only matter if you understand both their power and their limitations. A giant who knows only how to be tall is less dangerous than a smaller man who knows how to fight giants. Will you teach me? The question was direct, humble, stripped of any ego or pretense. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who had never asked anyone to teach him anything physical since he was a child, was asking to become a student. Bruce extended his hand. It will require you to empty your cup, to set aside everything you think you know about your body and its capabilities. Your size will remain your greatest asset, but only after you learn to see it clearly. Are you prepared for that? Kareem grasped the offered hand, his massive palm once again engulfing Bruce's smaller one. But this time, the handshake carried a different meaning. Not a greeting between strangers, but a bond between teacher and student. I am prepared. That evening marked the beginning of one of the most remarkable relationships in martial arts history. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar became one of Bruce Lee's most dedicated students, training with him for years while simultaneously ascending to NBA's. The contrast between them never diminished. In every session, Bruce remained 19 inches shorter, 95 pounds lighter, operating in physical dimensions that seemed impossibly mismatched against his towering student. But those sessions transformed Kareem's understanding of his own body. Bruce taught him to see his height not merely as a static advantage, but as a dynamic tool with countless applications and vulnerabilities. He learned to protect his lower body, to use his reach with precision rather than assumption, to move in ways that complemented rather than relied upon his unusual size. Their friendship culminated in one of the most iconic fight scenes ever filmed. In Game of Death, Bruce Lee and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar faced each other on screen. Their real-life training relationship translated into cinema. The scene showcased everything Bruce had taught about overcoming size disadvantages, about finding angles and exploiting blind spots, about the principle that skill and wisdom could triumph over raw physical attributes. Kareem would continue practicing martial arts for the rest of his life. Long after Bruce Lee's tragic passing in 1970, in countless interviews over the decades, he spoke of his teacher with reverence. That time only deepened. Bruce showed me that size is just one variable in an equation with many factors. Kareem would tell interviewers, his voice carrying the weight of hard-won wisdom. I spent my basketball career being the biggest person on the court. I thought that meant I understood my body. Bruce taught me that I had only scratched the surface. He showed me dimensions of physical capability I never knew existed. When asked what single lesson he took from his years of training with Bruce Lee, Kareem's answer was always the same. Every advantage has a counter. Every giant has blind spots. The man who knows only his strengths will eventually be defeated by someone who has studied his weaknesses. True mastery is not about being unbeatable. It is about understanding yourself so completely that you can never be surprised. The encounter between Bruce Lee and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar became a foundational story in martial arts history, not as a tale of conflict, but as a testament to the power of open-minded learning. It demonstrated that physical attributes, no matter how extraordinary, were only the beginning of combat capability. That a 7'2" giant could be humbled and educated by a man who barely reached his chest. And that the most powerful lessons often came from the most unexpected teachers. On that autumn evening in 1967, a basketball legend asked a simple question about size and combat. The answer he received changed his understanding of his own body, forged a friendship that would last beyond death, and created one of the most memorable scenes in martial arts cinema. All because a small man looked up at a giant and showed him that true power has nothing to do with height. If this story inspired you to look beyond obvious advantages and discover hidden dimensions of capability, do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that size is just one variable in the equation of success. Leave a comment telling us what hidden advantage you have discovered in what others see as a limitation. We will see you in the next video with more incredible stories from the world of martial arts.